Hey guys, and welcome back to another Unreal Engine 4 tutorial. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to hide under a bed. So this is a good and quite common horror game mechanic or anything like that, in which basically the player can run up to a bed and hide underneath it, move the camera around, and they can get back out. And this is good to hide from an AI. So again, if it's a horror, you might hide from the AI or anything along those lines, so you hide from the enemy. But this isn't just horror specific, this is just where it's most commonly used. So let me show you what this is going to look like now. So if I get into first person, I go up to the bed, move around, all this good stuff, and if I press H, I'm going to go under the bed. I'm going to move the camera around like this, and it limits where we can look, so we can only look certain angles, up, down, left, and right. When we press H, we get back out like that, and we can run around again like so. So let me delete this code, and I'll show you how I've made this. And also the bed model that I'm going to be using, I'll leave a link in the description down below to where you can download that from. So what our first step is going to be, is we want to open up our third-person character blueprint, as that is where we're going to be starting off with this code. So for me, that's content, third-person BP, blueprints, third-person character. But for you, this could be third, first, or whatever you've named it. Once we're in here, we're going to want to find some empty space. So I'm just going to go down here, and I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to add a custom event. I'm going to name this one hide. Out of this, I'm going to create a boolean. So I'm going to hit the plus variable down here, and I'm going to call this one is hiding, question mark, like so, making sure this is a boolean, so this red value here, so it's true or false. And I'm going to set that after the hide there, so off the custom event, and I'm going to tick it, so we are hiding. Then what I'm also going to do is drag and drop the character movement in here, come out of this, I'm going to disable movement, so the player can't move while they're under the bed. That's just where they now are, until they press H again to get out. Underneath this, I'm going to right click and add another custom event. This one I'm going to name unhide, so they're now getting out of the hiding spot. Off of this, I'm going to set is hiding to false, so leave it unticked, and I'll come off the character movement again, and this time I'm going to set movement mode to be walking, like so. So now what we're going to do is when we hide, we're going to let the code know we're hiding and stop the character from moving. When we unhide, we're going to let the code know we're not hiding, and then we can move again. Now what we also want to do on the unhide is after the set movement mode, we want to set view target with blend. So what we're going to do first is we're going to right click and get player controller, like so. And out of this is when we're going to actually get set view target with blend, like so. With that going in the target, and the new view target will just be a reference to self. So you can come out that and just get self, so get a reference to self, like so. So what it's going to do is it's just going to basically mean that the player's view and the camera is going to go back to the character and not the bed. So we'll set up going to the bed in a minute, but we don't want to do that in this blueprint. We just want to set up going back in this blueprint. So the blend time as well, you also saw at the beginning where I showed you, we had this kind of smooth transition from it moving between the two. We want to do that here as well. So the blend time, I'm going to set to be 0.5, as that's how long I want it to take. You can set this to be absolutely whatever you want. And then after this, I'm going to hold down D and left click to get a delay, plugging that in there, and the duration of this is our blend time. So I want this to be 0.5 seconds, as that's why I put the blend time in there as. And after this, we want to get set actor hidden in game. We're going to leave the new hidden as unticked. And the reason we're doing that is because if we duplicate this up here and plug this into the disable movement, so now we're setting actor hidden in game on the hide as well, we're going to tick this. And this is because what we're doing is we're not actually moving the player under the bed, we're just getting rid of the player and putting the camera under the bed. So we're going to make it so the player can't be seen and can't be collided with. So as far as the player's aware, they're under the bed, but realistically they're not, just because it's easier on the code. And we don't have to come up with different collision settings, different animations, all that stuff. We just need to do this, so it's a lot easier for us. And again, more efficient for the code. So this is done the visibility. Now we just need to do the collision as well. So we're going to drag and drop a reference to our capsule component up here, drag out of that, and we're going to set collision enabled. Off of the top one here, we're going to set it to no collision. So when we're hiding, we have no collision. Now if we duplicate it down here, plugging it in there like so, target back into capsule component, we'll set this to be collision enabled query in physics. So now we have the collision back. And that is the hide and unhide custom event set up here. So when we hide, we'll let the code know we're hiding, disable the movement, and make it so the character is invisible and has no collision. When we unhide, we'll let the code know that, make it so the player can walk again, smoothly transition the camera back to the player. After the camera's finished moving, we'll set the player to be visible and have collision again. So that is this part set up. We can compile, save that, and that is all the code we need to do in the character blueprint. So we can close that like so. What we want to do next is we want to create our bed BP. So I'm going to go to content, and I've created a new folder, and I've called it bed hide like so. In here you can see I've already got the bed files here, because I've already imported them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, get a blueprint class, and I'm going to get an actor like so, and I'm going to name this one bed hide BP, or just bed BP. You can name this absolutely whatever you like. I'm going to open it up straight away. What we're going to do is we're going to minimize this a little bit like so, and I'm going to select all of the files and all of the meshes that we have for the bed. So you can join these as well when you're importing, but I just have it like this. So what I'm going to do is select all of those, go back to the bed blueprint, add component, I'm going to add static mesh multiple assets, and now you can see we have the bed in here perfectly like so. So now we have the bed in here as well. What we want to do is we want to add a box collision, so where the player has to be in order to get in and out of the bed. So I'm going to deselect everything, add a component, and add a box collision like so. And again, this is the area the player has to be in order to get in and out of the bed. So you can make this as big as you want, but I reckon this is the size I want it to be. So they have to be next to the bed, about that close, and then they can get in and out. So that's going to work for me. That's good. Set this to whatever you like. Then when we deselect that again, we want to add one final component in here, and that's the camera, so the player can see through it. So we're going to add component, add a camera, like so. I'm going to leave that at 0 and 0, but put it at 20 on the Z, so just raise it up a little bit, so the player is off the floor, because their head is obviously off the floor. I'm going to rotate it on the Z to be 90, so it's facing out like this, as this is where I want the front of the bed to be. You can have this face whichever direction you want. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the field of view. Instead of moving the camera on the X, I'll change the field of view. So what I'm going to do is minimize this ever so slightly, like this. And I'm going to drag and drop this bed in here, so we have it in here, like so. Now you can see that what we can do is we can see what this camera is going to be seeing. So you can leave it like that, but I'm just going to increase the FOV like this so we can see a bit more, so we can see the bed frame and the stands as well. So I think about 130 FOV is going to be good for me. You can set this to be absolutely whatever you like though. Like I say, 130 is good for me. You customize this to get it perfect for you. So we can deselect that and then open this back up again, like so. And one final thing we want to do in the viewport is we want to make sure with the camera still selected, we're going to tick use pawn control rotation, so when the player moves the mouse, we're going to be moving the camera as well. So we can compile, save, and then go over to the event graph in here. And what we're going to do in here is we can just delete these 3 events here, like so. What we'll do next is we're going to right click on our box collision in the components list up here. We're going to add event, add on component begin overlap. Right click on it again, add event, add on component end overlap. So this is going to determine if the player is or isn't close enough to the bed in order to hide in it. So to determine if it is the player, we're going to come out of the other actor, I'm going to cast to third person character, or just your character, which could be third, first, whatever you've named it. I'm going to do that on the other actor for both of these events, like so. Off of this top one here, I'm going to right click as third person character and promote this to variable. I'm going to call this character reference, and this is just so we can easily access this later on to keep the code looking nice and neat and not messy at all. And then above this, we're going to get an action mapping. So we could just right click and get a H keyboard event, but to do it slightly more efficiently, I'm going to go to edit, project settings, and once this loads, we're going to go down to input on the left down here, and we're going to hit a plus action mapping. Now don't worry if you don't have any of these other ones here, these are just from previous tutorials I've done. So we're going to hit plus action mapping like so. Name this to be whatever you want, so I want this to just be hide, or hide under bed, or anything like that. I'm going to change the key from none to be the H keyboard event. And now this doesn't need to be H, you can set this to be absolutely whatever you want. So H, E, F, left mouse button, right mouse button, absolutely anything. But I think H is going to work good for me. And the benefit of doing action mappings is we can set up different keys, so we can have multiple keys. We can set it up for different consoles, and we can also set up key bindings. So once you've done that, we're just going to close this, right click back in the event graph. Now if I search for hide, you can see we have hide input action there. So now when the player presses H, whatever you set it to, it's going to fire off this event. But in order for the player to actually use this and be able to press H, we need to enable the input. And I only want to do that if we're near enough to the bed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click under here and get player controller, like so. Out of this, I'm going to enable input. This not going to the target, but going to the player controller instead. And enable input will go off of this begin overlap cast there, and then off of this get player controller again, I'm going to disable input and plug that into the cast third person end overlap. Again, not going into target, but going into the player controller. And what this means is that if we are close enough to the bed in order for us to be able to get in, if we press H, then we're going to be able to get into the bed. So I'm just going to move this up a little bit like so. Now again, to make sure that we are close enough to the bed, what we're going to do is we're going to hold down G and left click to get a gate. the enter going to the pressed of this hide input action there, open off of the begin overlap line, and the end overlap line going to closed. So again, if we are in the overlap and we press H, then we can enter the gate and do the rest of the code that we want to do. So off of the exit here, I'm going to hold down B and left click to get a branch, plugging that in there like so. And the condition of this we want to have is our is hiding variable, which we made. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the character reference here, so get character ref, and out of this I'm going to get is hiding like so, plugging that into the condition there. So basically, if we are hiding, we want to unhide. If we're not hiding, we want to hide. Because obviously if the player is pressing H while they're under the bed, we want to get out. If they press H while they're next to the bed, we want to get in. So that's why we have this here. It's just instead of a flip-flop, which toggles between two different values. So off of true, like I say, we want to unhide. So we're going to come out the character reference again, and we're going to unhide like so. So call function, unhide, going into true there like that. I'm going to double click this line to get some reroute nodes to keep it organized, and I can come out of that reroute node and get hide. So call function, hide, like so, plugging that into false there. So now what's going to happen when the player presses H when they're close enough, if we are hiding, we're going to unhide, and when we're not hiding, we're going to hide, which again is setting up the code we made earlier of just hiding the player's collision and visibility and preventing them from moving, or the opposite of that. And off of hide, we want to do some more stuff. So obviously we want to make it so the player looks through the bed's camera. So to do that, we're going to hold down S and left click to get a sequence, plugging that in there like so. Off of then 1, I'm going to hold down D and left click to get a delay, plugging that in there. With the duration, I'll leave as 0.2. The completed of this is going to go all the way back down into the enable input over here, which will go into the open there. Now I'll double click this to get some root nodes to keep it nice and organized. Now the reason we're doing this is because when we disable the player's collision, it's going to fire this end overlap and disable input, meaning we can't press H because the gate will be closed, and we also can't press it because we disabled the input. So we just need to do this again, and then that will work perfectly like so. Again, I'll just reroute this to keep it nice and organized. And off of then 0, we want to change the camera perspective. So we're going to right click and get player controller. Off of this, I'm going to set view target with blend. Again, plugging that into then 0 there. The new view target of this is going to be get a reference to self, again like so, as obviously we want to make sure that the camera in the bed blueprint is the one we are looking through. Again, I'm going to set the blend time to be 0.5 seconds. And then we're going to come back here to do something after this later on. We can compile and save that. And what we want to set up now is actually letting the player move the camera. So what you'll see, if we test this out, if we minimize, hit play, we go over to it, I press H, I'm going to go under, if I press H, we'll get back out again. And you see the player is hidden perfectly like so. But if I get under, we can't actually move the camera yet. I'm moving my mouse, but the camera is not moving. So we need to do that now. So what we're going to do is go back to our bed blueprint here, scroll down underneath this code and find some empty space. I'm going to right click and get an input axes look up. So the axes event there, look up like so. And I'm also going to get the input action turn, or input axes turn, sorry, like so. And this is what handles the movement of the mouse. So in our character blueprint, you'll see we'd have this, and it just goes into add controller pitch and your input. We're going to be doing that, but doing it slightly differently. So if I hold on B, left click to get a branch, plugging that in there like so, I'll do that for both of these. The condition of this is going to be it's hiding again. So if I just drag and drop a reference to our character reference there, out of this, get is hiding, like so, plugging that into the condition of these two branches. Off of false, so if we're not hiding, we want to move the camera like normal. And that's just because when we overlap, it's going to enable the input, meaning it will move dependent on this part here instead of the character. So we're going to come out the character reference, and we're going to add controller pitch input up here. And the pitch is going to be for look up. Again, that's going to go into false there. And the value of this will just be the axis value of the input axis, like so. Come out the character reference again, and this time add controller your input, and that is left and right. Again, going to false there, like that. Put the value into there, like so. Now we compile, and that will work for if the player just walks near enough the bed, they're still going to be able to look around like normal. But now we want to actually enable the player to move the camera when they're hiding. So let's do that as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new variable. So we're going to hit a plus variable here. I'm just going to call this one pitch. I'm going to change this to be a float like so. Compile that, and I'm going to leave the default value as 0. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get that there. So this is the top one here. So get. Out of that, I'm going to go get a plus, so a float plus a float. And I'm going to connect the bottom value into the axis value of the look up there. Off of this, I'm going to set pitch like so. So set pitch there, plugging that into true like that. I'll just move all this down here like so. So what this is going to do is every time we move the mouse, it's going to be altering the pitch, and to do that, it's going to be getting the current pitch and adding this value to it. So if we move it right, it will get higher. If we move it left, it will get lower. Or pitch, sorry, this is up and down. So this will still work perfectly how it normally would. And then by default, the pitch is inverted. So all I want to do to fix that is I'm just going to get a float multiplied by a float. And I'm going to times this by -1. And that just inverts it. Or for me, that feels like it's the right way around. So again, you don't need to do that if you don't want, but you probably will. So customize that part to get it how you want. Either have it as -1 or 1 to leave it as default, or just don't have it. So now let's do the same for the yaw down here. So what I might do is actually just give us some more space. Just keep it looking a little bit nicer and a little bit neater. I might actually just move these back a bit like so. Then we're going to do the exact same process down here. Create another variable. This one is going to be yaw. Again, leaving it as a float. Drag and drop this here. Get yaw. We're going to get a plus, so a float plus a float, an addition node. And again, we're going to be adding this to the axes value down here, so that when we move the mouse, it's going to be setting the new yaw to the total that we want it to be. And again, we're going to set the yaw off of this, so it works perfectly like so. True, going in there like that. True, the branch that is. So that will work perfectly like so. Let me just line these up like that. So that's calculating the actual pitch and yaw for the camera, but now we need to set this to be on the camera. So to do that, we're going to right click, we're going to get a make rotator, like so. And you can see that the Y is the pitch and the Z is the yaw. They're the ones we want to do it on. The X, which is the roll, we don't want to mess around with. So what I'm going to do before just connecting these straight up is I'm going to right click and get a clamp node. This is going to be a clamp float. The value will just be the yaw there. The return value of this will go into the Z yaw there. I'm going to do the same up here, get a clamp value being the return value of that there, the return value going to the yaw down there. Now we're going to set up the minimum and maximum values. So some values which I found earlier when I was making this code. The minimum for the pitch was -10, so you can look down by 10, and then the max I had as just 10. So you can look down to -10 and up by 10 degrees. And then for the yaw, I had the minimum as 60 and the maximum as 120. Now how I found these values was I simply just got an event tick and then print stringed the yaw value, moved the camera around to get it perfect for me, and then I print stringed the values for pitch and again moved it to get the perfect values for me and how I wanted it to be, and I just got those values and put them in here. And what the clamp does as well, is it means that the camera can't go past these values. So you might like these values as well. These are the ones I had at the beginning of the video. If not, you can just mess around with them. You might not need to do the print string method that I showed you earlier, although it does help. It's very quick. But since I've given you these starter values here, you can just mess about with these, so increase or decrease them ever so slightly until you find the values which work best for you. But I imagine you'd quite like these probably. Again, event tick, print string with this, move the camera around, which I'll finish up in a second, and then you can get it perfect for you of how you want. So now we're calculating it, and to actually move the camera, we're going to use this make rotator here. So what I'm going to do is get a reference to the camera here, so drag and drop that. I'll come out of this, I'm going to set relative rotation, like so. And the new rotation of this is going to be the return value of this make rotator there. And that will work perfectly like so. And just in front of this set relative rotation, I'm going to right click and add a custom event like that. And I'm going to name this one move camera. With this, I'm going to hold down B, left click to get another branch, plugging that in there like so. Condition of this is again going to be if we're hiding. So I'm going to get the character reference there, come out of this and get is hiding. With that as the condition. And the reason we want to do this is because as soon as we stop hiding, we don't want to be doing this anymore, and so it won't be moving this camera, and it will also just stop this loop, meaning it won't be checking for it anymore. So that is how we want to do that to make it more efficient for us. Off of true, we're going to go into this set relative rotation there. And again, false will do nothing, as that's going to break the loop. And then to create the loop, we're going to hold down D, left click after this, and set this to something very, very small, like 0.001. And that's just to make sure that this code can finish, so it doesn't become an infinite loop. Otherwise, we won't be able to break it. And off the completed, we're going to simply call function move camera like so. And then to start the loop, we want to come back up here where we have set view target with blend. We're going to come off of that. We're going to call function move camera like so. Now this should be the code fully set up. So we can compile, save, we'll test this out in a second. Let me just run you through what this is doing. So if we're near enough to the bed and we press H to hide, what we're going to do is if we are hiding, we're going to stop hiding. If we're not, we're going to hide, which again, all that does is it just disables the character's movement, sets them to be invisible, and removes their collision. What it's going to do then is, with this delay here, it's going to go back into this to make sure that we can get back out of the bed, so get back out of our hiding position. And it's also going to transition our camera to be the camera from the player to the camera under the bed that we want to look through. And it's going to call the function move camera, and all this does down here is it just calculates the correct pitch and yaw values on the player's mouse movements, and then sets that to rotate the camera like so, and again loops that until we're no longer hiding, so that when the player's moving the camera, it's moving the camera under the bed as well. And so that works perfectly. So also one other adjustment I'm going to make is this yaw value here. I'm going to set the default value to be 90. I've got that because on the camera here, the default value is 90. That just means that it's going to look in the correct direction when we get under the bed. So we compile, save that. What I'm going to do now is minimize. I'm going to hit play to test this. So I'm going to go into first person. I'm going to walk up to the bed. We can still move the camera around perfectly normal like so. If I press H, we've gone under the bed. The player is no longer there. You can't see them. Now we can move the mouse around as well. And you can see it stops at a certain angle. So if I go all the way to the left, it stops there. Go all the way to the right, it stops there. If I go all the way up, it stops there. All the way down, it stops there. So those values work perfectly like so. And so this works great for us. You can see that we're now under the bed, moving the camera. If I press H, it's going to transition back out. And we're back out here like so. The player's still here like that. And this works perfectly. So I think that'll be it for this video. We've done everything we wanted to do. We set up a function in which we can hide under a bed. If we go up to it, we press H. We're going to go under the bed. We can move the camera around. We press H. We're going to get back out of the bed like so. And again, you can change how quick or how slow that camera transition is between. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, make sure to like and subscribe down below. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.